I would like to welcome all of you to this living teaching of Advaita. If you are online and would like to ask a question or make a comment, then instructions on how to raise your hand electronically can be found in the chat window. What is your name?
Jordan.
Jordan.
Yes.
Have you met before, Jordan?
We have not. This is my first time coming.
I see. So how is it that you find yourself here today, Jordan?
Well, it's yesterday I was looking online to see what material there was on the 12 steps and non-dualism.
Right.
And one thing led to another, and I came across your book.
I see.
The Way of Powerlessness.
Yes.
And then that took me to, I think it was Advaita.org.
Right.
And just through digging, I saw that you held these talks. I live in Long Beach.
Oh, I see.
And I sent an email to someone at the website. I said, so I just show up. And they said, yeah. I was like, all right, I'm gonna come by. I've been doing 12-step work for about a year now, but I've been immersed in learning and reading about Advaita non-dualism for years.
I see.
And yeah, so but it feels like the universe brought everything together.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, you haven't had time to read my book.
I actually read about the first 40, 50 pages last night.
I see.
And I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense.
I see.
So I've been thinking, as I've been going to a lot of meetings and doing 12-step work and working with a sponsor.
Right.
Just there's so much in there that speaks to there's a lot in common with the 12 steps, but I haven't heard anyone in any of the meetings that I go to talk about or hint to that they're exposed to non-dualism or Advaita.
Right.
And a couple times I've asked some questions or kind of poked and prodded to see if I'd get any response from people. And I haven't, and I don't want to push it and preach. So yeah. Sound like you were going to ask a question, though. I kind of
no. Your 50 pages in the book.
Any questions
or observations for that matter?
Lots of observations, I think. I've come to the place where I've read in the past 2.5 years countless books on Advaita and non-dualism. I've listened to hours and hours of YouTube talks, and just to satisfy my intellectual craving.
Right.
And I feel like I've come to the point where the intellectual questions aren't even there anymore. Everything makes sense from an understanding and an experiential standpoint that we are all sharing the same life force. And even more and more, I have the experience of it's not me, the so-called Jordan, that's in control. I ask myself often, what is it that is aware of everything that's happening right now?
Right.
And I sense and realize that it's something much greater.
Right.
That I can't put into words. And I don't feel much like I even have to try, or I don't feel like I should need to put it into words. And so, but at the same time, there continues to be human challenges that arise, that going to 12-step meetings and doing the work has helped a lot with some struggles with alcohol and marijuana and food compulsive behaviors. So, because I started discovering Advaita before going into the 12-step work.
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, this will help me overcome all these challenges. And it didn't. So that's why I tried going and doing 12-step work, which has helped. So I've had, coming up on a year of sobriety and just really starting to get things under control. So I guess my observation is there's certain human challenges that I need to work with other humans on, but at the same time, there's the spiritual path that I want to continue to deepen, and they're all one and the same.
Right.
It's not a separation. So my observation is just, and the thing I've been curious about is how to bring these two together.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's a question so much as just, I guess maybe that is the question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you bring these two worlds together? And then one of the things that I've noticed in going to a lot of these meetings and 12-step work is people seem so close to understanding something deeper, the deeper truth, but yet are still so stuck in the I am a person.
Right.
And it's a spiritual program. So I am praying to God, and it would be nice to be able to be in community more with people who are like, yes, I'm praying to God, but also I am made of God, and God is my true nature. And so those are just some.
Well, those are very difficulty that you are describing of feeling a bit of a disconnect between having to do stuff in the world and clearly, feeling this imperative to like recover from addiction and solve life problems, and at the same time have the consciousness that everything is happening as part of the functioning of the universe. That those two things can at times seem in opposition to one another or too separate from one another. And it is precisely that which this teaching is pointing to. Yes, that is your experience. And at the root of that experience is this quality, but is this quality not of being Jordan or Wayne, but of being independent as Jordan and Wayne.
Yeah.
So that's really the more subtle aspect of this whole thing. The first out of the box kind of realization is that Jordan's the problem or Wayne's the problem. And if I could just recognize myself as pure consciousness, I'm golden. So when I realize my divinity and all as well, which is great in theory, but in practice, our bodies get sick and ache and have all of these qualities and characteristics that our bodies have. And so keeping that consciousness of I am the undifferentiated manifest in my true nature, just be momentary.
Yeah.
And it always flips back. So what the approach that we're taking here and what the emphasis of this living teaching of Advaita is on the living. It's the fact that there is this quality of Jordanness. Jordan has these qualities. He's an addict. He's an alcoholic. He has this issue. He has these drives, these desires, these characteristics. We've done an inventory, so you know what the structure of Jordan is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, rather than trying to throw all of that out the window, which of course is impossible, we take what is there, and see if we can recognize the true nature of this collection of qualities.
Mm. Yeah.
And that is the synthesis that does come, that is the spiritual awakening, ultimately, is the recognition that what we are is this totality, but as this,
Yeah.
not as that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been feeling more and more that I am this consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
Flowing as energy through this apparent person and mind. And I think what I'm looking for is how to be more stabilized in it, and how to be more at peace with all of the Jordan stuff that it just keeps going, and it's going to keep going.
Right.
And then I'll just share also, for the past 2 years, I've had this hunger and this thirst to also be with other people that share the understanding that we are not just this human form, and the truth of things. And no one in my life, my wife, my friend, no one shares this understanding. And so it can feel like I'm kind of crazy at times.
Right.
And I have to be very careful if I bring it up or talk about it, because it can threaten people. And I've just stopped bringing it up, which
that is towards wisdom.
When I first discovered all this stuff, I felt like I had to talk about it a lot, and now I'm keeping this as my jewel. But it would be nice to also be in community with people that share this understanding.
Right. Was that when talking about this stuff, when the impulse arises and it's irresistible to talk about, the approach, the only one that is viable at all, is to share one's own experience. To say, this is what I experienced, this is what happened for me. And without all of the trappings of the philosophy of non-dualism. Simply, was my experience, because no one can argue with your experience. There's no basis for argument. There's no basis for being threatened. So I'm not saying that this is anybody else's experience, but this is my experience. And that, in my experience and my observation, the only possible successful way to deal with this with others at all.
You're totally right. There was a period of time there I was reading a lot of Rupert Spira, Francis Lucille. I don't know if those names are familiar, and I was like, okay, someone brought something up. Well, I read this thing that Rupert said, or I read this thing, let me share this. No. If actually just happened last night, I was sharing with my wife, I recently, Leslie is her name, I said, this is something I've been noticing within myself. And she received it in a totally different way. And she said something about, well, I'll let you be an expander for me, which I didn't know what she meant by that, but she's exploring something where they talk about bringing expanders into your life. And
right.
That was proof right there. Usually she would tell me, Jordan, I've heard enough of your lecturing, but she said, I'll let you be an expander for me. It's like, oh, I get to be an expander. So
what kind of work you do?
I am, my title is COO, which is just kind of fancy for overseeing all the day-to-day operations for a technology company. We're about 60 people, truly remote company, which affords me the opportunity to be able to do things like this on a normal work day. So
excellent.
Yeah. So that's the day-to-day job, pays the bills.
Oh, hi. This is Diana in Texas.
Hello,
And
Diana.
hi, Wayne. I just love your books. The Way of Powerlessness and Nevermind was exactly what I'm experiencing.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've studied Advaita for many years, but a couple years ago, got involved with ACA. It's Adult Children of Alcoholics.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And yeah, and my parents weren't alcoholic, but their parents were. So what I'm finding is, they have a community of people to talk to that don't interrupt, and there's rules and all this kind of thing. But in my question, my question is, in its behaviors, over and over again, I feel it's reinforcing the belief in the separate self, and that I, quote, separate self, can change my behaviors, which makes me laugh. But finding a community of people that I can talk to, that's the desire
Yes.
and the
Because
challenge. Yeah.
it is a rare consciousness. And even in the expanded world of that consciousness, let's say, or of the teaching, in which the principles are articulated, there even there there is the possibility for quite a bit of misunderstanding. So the the crucial pointer here in this living teaching of Advaita that you have wandered into today, uh, the crucial thing here is that we are, by the very structure of the universe, separate from one another, but we are not independent of one another. So we are at the same time intimately connected and each unique and different. So it is that consciousness of both that is the subject of this teaching. We can call it the wisdom of both.
Thank you. That's very affirming. Your I forget which book it was, but My Addiction to Power.
Right, the way of powerlessness. Uh-huh.
It's in there. Okay.
Yeah.
I said, oh, he nailed it right there. I mean, it's but the community of people to talk to that remind. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, the only actually these days, the way it has all evolved, there haven't been any gatherings in the United States for a few years. Most of the gatherings are in Europe. We do week-long retreats in Europe. So if you can gather the time and the resources to come to Lanzarote, Spain in April, a group of like-minded people, and a week of the ecstasy of sitting in that consciousness with people, because it is quite a wonderful experience, but it is rare.
Very good. Yes. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Diana.
It's an interesting experience to make eye contact with someone, but not say anything. Can you explain?
Well, someone does that, I feel privileged to be let inside of them.
It's not something we do much these days.
Occurrence. So,
Or I think for a lot of us, our instant response often, if someone is looking at us, is that we feel threatened.
what do they want?
And your mind starts doing all kinds of interesting. At the same time, I also notice, and I don't. Oh yeah. At the same time, I also notice that when I'm making eye contact with someone, if I am privileged enough that they return that eye contact in the conversation, there are moments where I get this sense that it's the same. What is seeing that person is the same that's seeing me.
Yeah.
You mind if I ask a question?
Not all, please.
I think most of what I have been reading about when it comes to Advaita is termed under the direct path. And what are some of the differences or similarities between the direct path understanding and the living teaching?
I have truly no idea. I'm not a student of Advaita. So I really don't know what other people are doing. I don't read other teachings and other teachers or look at videos so the demarcations that various people have made, to compare this teaching and that teaching and bundle together these teachers under this umbrella and this under that umbrella, all of that I have.
Okay.
I believe that this is what I would call a direct path, meaning that what all we are concerned with is your direct seeing of what is being pointed at. That's the only consideration. So it has nothing to do with particular practices or levels of consciousness or any of the rest of that kind of thing. The only consideration is this, what is described in the 12th step as the spiritual awakening, this, which can be of an educational variety or instant, but it is understood to be one in which there is seeing, and that understanding that is being pointed at is your seeing. It is, and in that seeing, even you are transcended as an independent entity. So there is seeing, and yes, the seeing of quote happens through you nominally. The seeing itself is not your seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the way I would talk about it.
Makes sense. So I throughout the day, want something practical that I could do that brings me back to the understanding and the experience of truth. So what I typically do is I ask myself, what is it that's aware? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, ideas on
that? That is the sage Ramana Maharshi's pointer. Ask yourself. Mine is look. that's my predominant pointer. Look deeply. But they're all need to be understood as pointers.
Mm.
So whichever one or ones you find to be effective for you in terms of bringing you back to a more expansive place, then do it. If you can.
Yeah.
And that's the other main pointer that I use, which is if you can.
Yeah, because you forget. There's this just constant forgetting
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And then I noticed, okay, I'm back in the false sense of authorship. I'm back in that separate self mode.
Mm-hmm.
And you sometimes catch it, sometimes you don't.
Right. When you catch it, you're out of it, actually.
Yes.
So at that point, you say, I'm in the separate self mode. You actually aren't. You're not caught in it at that moment. There's a recognition that, and the way my guru, this fellow Ramesh Balsekar, the way he talked about it, he said the team arises and cuts off that involvement, that sense of independence. So it isn't that you remember, the teaching comes up and cuts it off. And it isn't that you forget, but that this secondary involvement starts to happen again. So the significant pointer is that this is all a happening and a functioning of the universe that is occurring through you, the seeing and the not seeing, the presence and the quality of independence. All of those are happening.
It's like the consciousness forgets itself and then sees.
That'd be one way of putting it.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I have all kinds of other questions coming to mind, but I'm not familiar with how this gathering operates.
Right. Your questions are most welcome, and how it generally happens is that in the beginning, there's a lot of questions, quite naturally. I mean, it's not that you elevate to a point where you have no more questions. It's just they get kind of cleared up. So you are very much engaged in the process, and you are more than welcome to engage in that process. And most of the people who, there's 50 people online, and you guys, and most of the people have been around for a while. So
Okay.
So you are not taking somebody else's time, so you can feel
that is, of course, the
no, that's, I mean,
well, I started reading your book last night, and so got a little bit of the background of
in the language.
With FSA, and I'm glad that I read that last night. It was helpful. What was there a point at which you were working in the 12 steps, but then you also, was there a point at which you were like, okay, the 12 steps were good for me at this point, this is not necessarily where I need to be right now? Or
no, there was never teachings, which are essentially happened through the 11th step, were, to my mind, totally consistent and with the explorations that are encouraged by the the 12-step program. So I never felt any dislocation between the two. I was fortunate to encounter this kind of teaching, fairly early on, and felt quite comfortable with both the 12-step program and this particular teaching of non-dualism, as it was expressed through this fellow Ramesh Balsekar. And ultimately, I became quite involved with him. And I mean, I both emotionally and in terms of a deep and profound personal connection, which was spectacular. I mean, unexpected, and very much one of the great blessings of my life to have that connection, which comes under the nominal heading of the guru-disciple relationship. Wasn't what I was looking for. I began this my own spiritual search, but I was blessed to get it. I think I'm sure I wrote about that in the book.
What's interesting for me is that since I've spent the last 2.5 years reading a lot and listening to a lot of discussions, at times it starts to feel almost like there's a dependence on the material now. And one of the things that I've been asking myself is, if I'm going to I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm just going to sit, there's this desire to let me put on one of these discussions on YouTube and let me listen to someone talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's like almost an inner battle of, should I listen to it or should I just be in the silence? But because I'm hearing the same things over and over again now, it's almost like an addiction to the spiritual quest. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
Well, with addiction is that it's a behavior that impacts my life negatively. That's what I mean. The fact that I have is a repeated behavior and one that I am interested in doesn't necessarily make it in my mind an addiction. But it's when my life begins to be impacted negatively by that behavior that it crosses over into what I consider to be addiction. Since the pointer of the teaching is that the root of all of our behavior is the same. So it isn't that this quote uncontrollable behavior is somehow different from the other behaviors. It is all being sourced from the same point, both the ones that are positive and the ones that are negative. And it is the recognition of that this teaching is concerned with.
And that is the desire of the separate self to become connected again?
Well, it is the desire, yes, of this, and this desire of the separate self to feel connected when it is feeling disconnected is the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah.
In the same way that when you're in pain, to not be in pain is a genuine desire. So it is the sense that when this independent self gets involved in the desire of the separate self, in my language, the independent self is this quality of the false sense of authorship, the sense of I am an independent entity. It is up to me. I should or I should not do this or that. That's where the suffering arises. The desire itself to have more peace is the most natural desire in the world. When there is that which one desires doesn't happen, it's painful. That's pain. When what one desires happens, that's pleasure. But pain and pleasure are different from suffering. One suffers when that pain of not getting what one desires is co-opted by this sense of independence. Then I should have done it differently. The reason I am feeling this pain is because I didn't do it right. That I should have and could have done it differently. That's the subtle but crucial difference between pain and suffering.
When you add is it adding a story on top?
In the sense it is, we can call it that. But when you get below the story, the quality of the story is about the independent me. What I could have and should have or must in the future do from my own power. That generates the future or guilt for the past.
So you are assigning yourself a certain level of control that you don't necessarily
Exactly.
I see what you mean by the subtlety of it. Well, I think I do.
Perhaps.
Is it more of the false sense of authorship if you think you are going to be the one to let go of control?
But that is the sense that it is me, the independent, powerful entity that is responsible for the letting go or not. That is the false sense of authorship.
So when so like on a regular basis, I think, okay, Jordan, you need to let go now and let God come in and do the work. That's still,
Yeah,
yes,
it is.
that's
It is. I am. I mean, hear this. I am inhibiting God's work. I need to get out of the way to allow God to function. That puts you in the position of being more powerful than God, because God can't function unless you get out of the way.
but that's what 98% of 99% of what you hear in 12-step meetings is people talking about.
Yes, and that kind of part of what is. I mean, if you got the first step right away, there's no need for the next 10 steps.
Yeah.
None. If you got the first step completely, that you cannot manage your life.
Yeah. And you keep on trying to manage it
By getting out of the way. That's another management technique.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how do you get out of the way?
It happens. Like everything in the universe. It happens when it happens.
Yeah.
And what the false sense of authorship says is, well, if I'm not there to make it happen, then it probably won't happen. Because I'm concerned with me. I'm the one who's like really gonna like make the difference about whether it happens or not. So my efforts and my involvement is going to increase the odds
Yes.
of it happening because I influence things by my power.
Yes, which is why I try to go to more meetings and try to do more writing. And
No, okay, but here's the thing. No, you can going to more meetings, doing the writing, and doing all of those things have their own effect and their own impact. There's no question. But the source of your doing that, the source of your trying, is not you. That's the point of the teaching. That yes, you may be empowered to go to more meetings. You may be empowered to do the writing. You may be empowered to help others. You may be empowered to do the various things that when you do them, almost certainly there will be benefit. Not for 100%, there's nothing 100%, but the patterns of the universe suggest that when you do these kinds of things, these other things follow, usually. And we function on that basis of those, observing those patterns. When we can, when we're so empowered. But this teaching always points you back to the original question of what is it that has the power? What is fueling this? What is making what you do happen?
And there's a part of me that totally gets it and it makes complete sense. But then I also feel like I have this super strong. So often I wonder, is my false sense of ownership or ego just that much more powerful? Because it feels like it's fighting, it's doing everything it can to stay in control.
Narration, that occurrence of the involvement of the ego or the false sense of authorship. So you're more aware of it happening, not that it is more powerful in you than somebody else. It's simply it, because it has no power. This is the crucial thing to recognize. It is a false claimant. It is always claiming the power. It says, this is what I'm doing, even negatively. I'm obstructing. I'm in the way of God. I'm screwing this up. That's also the claim of authorship.
It's wild because I feel like I spend all day every day watching it and going in and out of observing it and being part of it and then observing it. And sometimes it feels like, well, sometimes it's peaceful and sometimes it feels like madness.
Right. Yeah. Yes, Mary.
Hi, Wayne. I wanted to talk about a letting go that happened that seemed so dramatic, and I just keep thinking about it. Maybe I'm trying to figure out how it happened so I can make it happen again, but
Okay.
it just occurred to me. But I think if I describe it to you, you'll undoubtedly have illuminate something. So I had gone through a couple days of just really feeling bad. There was a combination of things going on that were affecting my physiology, and there's some grief about some losses. And so I got into a story of, oh, this is going on. It's going to take forever to heal or resolve or whatever. And then focusing on these painful feelings. So what happened was just all of a sudden, it's like this bigger perspective came in, and I saw that what I'd been experiencing had a lot to do with the story I created around it that was keeping all these things in place. Keeping looking at the feelings and my idea about what the process was and what would or wouldn't happen. And then with that was like, oh, wow. Then after that, what I saw was how I had been trying. Okay, I had been trying. I know when I say I had been trying, it's God doing it, but I had been trying to micromanage every little thing I felt and thought and everything to get the outcome that I wanted, all in the sense of securing my future and seeing an outcome that would be where I would feel safe. So then when I saw that, and the realization was there that, well, that was just impossible. I guess the recognition of powerlessness came in. And then boom, I mean, the whole thing cut off. And it had been really strong for a couple of days and seemed so real. I mean, it was real in a way, but seeing that it was being constructed by, well, I mean, I can say the FSA, these, I don't know, man, it was amazing. It was amazing to see that that degree of suffering could just be gone. I mean, it was just gone. It was over. And then I just felt fine for a couple of days until something else came up. But I can't forget that. I mean, it's a really good pointer for me. And then I wanted to talk about, just because it's something that just feels so amazing. I'm having more and more times of just, holy cow, this whole thing is amazing. This is all just so amazing. And this morning I was walking my dog, and I was thinking of Morgan Freeman's voice and how much I love Morgan Freeman's voice, and how Morgan Freeman's voice seems to carry so much, for me, positive feeling with it. And then I just thought, Morgan Freeman's voice right now is seeming like this big, huge thing, but there's this vast, huge, unfathomable creation that's gone for vast, unfathomable time. And something about that, the juxtaposition of Morgan Freeman's voice and then this huge thing, it was just like, it's all just amazing. And of course, I thank you for being able to see that and enjoy living so much more. Thank you, Wayne.
Well, you're very welcome, Mary.
Good night. Рома, ты меня не будем будить.